what a fantastic performance we saw from Brisbane, and it was a one-sided match, but we saw the two best teams of the year, Swans for the majority of the home and away, and then Brisbane late take the field, and in the end, the victors definitely deserved their spoils. I thought that Brisbane were just harder for longer, and that's really what I want to look at in this first point. When it mattered, they were the more physical team. They won more of the important contests. They controlled the way the game was played and absolutely deserved their premiership on the final siren. The scoreboard wasn't looking the way that we were seeing the game take place. They absolutely dominated their back 50 and their forward 50. And the Swans couldn't get a foothold in either. The middle of the field was largely quite even. In fact, Sydney won contested possessions through the middle of the field. They won clearances through the middle of the field, but they just couldn't win a contest in front of the ball, and they definitely couldn't win a contest behind it. I thought the last minute of the second quarter was instructive. They just kicked their seventh goal for the quarter. That came out of a centre bounce. Zorko laid a solid tackle. Rayner lays a solid tackle out of a ball up, and then Starcevic finishes the quarter with a smother, basically on the halftime siren. They had 80 more possessions than the Swans, the Lions, but they had 19 more tackles. Their pressure was 213 through that second quarter, and they just put the Swans to the sword, and what all finals ask of you is, can you be harder for longer than your opposition? Can you put your opposition to the sword, and will they step up and match you, or will they wilt and will they break? And that's exactly what happened. 6
goals in 14 minutes. It reminded me of Melbourne's third quarter in the 2021 Grand Final, 7 goals in 16 minutes. But you say harder for longer, Bucks. It's only the second quarter. So how is it an endurance game that early in the match?
Well, it's harder for longer because you're asked to reach a level. One opposition will, and the grand final we watched 12 months ago was harder for longer in the last 2 or 3 minutes because you had two pretty evenly matched teams throughout an entire 4-quarter performance. But the Swans just weren't able to go with them. When you look at it, I don't know whether we always think this, you look in retrospect when a side bests another so significantly that we should have seen that coming. You look at the big bodies of Brisbane, and they seem bigger and stronger than the Swans players. They may or may not be, or it seems that they were more prepared for what a grand final asked for. Like Starcevic was huge. His performance was brilliant. Ainsworth's a solid body. Jared Berry on the wing. Rayner at half forward. Dunkley in the middle. Lester's an experienced player, big unit, playing in his role. Payne, Andrews, they're big bodies. Fort, you put you put McInerney in there, they look even bigger again. But Archie's an experienced, solid body. And I just thought that, to a man, they were the ones that were more desperate. They were the ones that were cleaner, and they were the team that were prepared to put their body on the line more. When they had the ball, there was time and space everywhere. When Sydney had the ball, there was none. So the fact that they were able to control that, they had possession for over 50% of the match. So it's the most possession they've ever enjoyed throughout any game in 2024 was the grand final. 53% of the time they had the ball in their hands, and the least amount of time that their opposition had the ball in their hands was the grand final. 32% of the times Sydney had the ball in their hands. So it's basically in a games of keepings off they won, and when the ball's in a contest they won. So that's that you're going to be a pretty significant result when you achieve that.
Chris Fagan.
Yeah, number 2 for me is Chris Fagan. Doesn't he deserve his flowers? There was some criticism throughout the year about his tactical acumen or lack thereof, and that was largely driven by David King, who has become a respected, I suppose, tactical analyst, and the fact that. We probably got caught up thinking that, that King is talking about coaching in general. He's only talking about matchday tactics, but there's a lot to matchday tactics rather than the X's and O's and moving it around. The matchups he got right, He had the trust and faith in his players, and the 95% of the major job of coaching is done outside of match day, and it's done over a long period of time. And I think the faith that Fags showed in his players, the faith that he had in himself and in his staff, was more than vindicated in a fantastic performance on Saturday. And Lee Matthews, as his mentor, was there to see it all. And obviously, Lee, having been there, done that, he could see in Fags exactly what he was going to become. A few words to describe Fags is what I see. I see him as consistent. He's measured. He's patient. The trust element that he has in his players is huge. I probably haven't seen it. Have you seen a coach, and you can reflect on this, have you seen a coach less outwardly emotive? Like, he was as measured as I've seen any coach in that situation before.
Steely focus.
Well, it was, but not just during the game. During the game, he was obviously, even when they got out to a winning lead, he was really focused on making sure they finished the job. But after the game, like the bloke couldn't push other people into the spotlight more.
There's something really endearing about seeing someone achieve something so significant that's a lifetime's work. Like, he's 63 years old, and he has spent the best part of 30 years honing his coaching craft.
Yep.
From Tassie to Melbourne, football boss at Hawthorn, rebuilding at Brisbane. To achieve this at that age is remarkable.
Yeah, well, at any age, I mean, he's got experience, and he's been able to gather that over a long period of time. He's been involved in successful programs. He's probably sat in the back stalls or on the shoulder of senior coaches in the past, and we know that Neale Danaher's encouraged him into this role. He's been alongside Alistair Clarkson in the Hawthorn days. He's got Lee Matthews in his corner. He's obviously a great people person. He's loyal, he's honourable, he's a decent man, he's pragmatic, he's empathic. All of the softer elements that I suppose if you go back a couple of generations, you go, well, is he combative enough? Is he competitive enough? Is he feisty enough? He is, but it's not overt. And those other elements come through. I think there's a few things. He got the matchups right. So I think Starcevic on Papley was huge. Dunkley on Heaney. So they weren't a surprise, but they were the right ones. You just got to get you got to get them right. Understanding that Jordan was going to come to Zorko, and it was really clear that he'd said to his midfielders, and Neale and Ashcroft were the main two, if Dane Zorko gets sat on, well, then we're going to miss out on his use in the back half. We're going to miss out on his uncontested marks and setting the game up. So we want two of our better playmakers to get back in the back half. So Neale, if you go back and watch the game again, he only had four clearances in the first half, which is not over the top for Lachie Neale. Ashcroft only had 2 clearances in the first half, which is definitely not over the top for him. But they had 19 and 16 touches respectively, and a lot of it was in the back half, getting back to support their back six and being able to provide an extra body to shift the ball and to be able to get their back half game going because of Dane Zorko more often than not being clamped. So that was a great coaching move.
Last week, Kane Corn said that Fagan got Chris Scott in the prelim, and you're saying that Fagan got Longmire. Do we underestimate how adept Chris Fagan was at actually strategic and tactical now?
No,
or did you underestimate?
We overestimate the tactics that make the difference. Like, so they're clearly, the one I just mentioned was huge. Getting the game plans right, getting the matchups right, and all of that is part of it. But the Lions predominantly played the way that they've always wanted to play. They're relatively predictable with how you go about it. The Swans weren't able to stop the Lions from imposing their game style. We feel like this whole idea of finding this one move that shifts the
silver
magnets.
Bullet move.
And we fall in love, like from the media fall in love with that from the coaching perspective.
Yeah,
it's more staid than that. It's less obvious. The more consistent elements are what breeds really good teams, and. The quick fix is very rarely the silver bullet that you discuss. It's more the basic elements. It's who does the simple things really well, and Brisbane did the simple things better. They were cleaner, they were harder, they won more one-on-ones, they won more contests around the field. They more of those those matchups went Brisbane Lions' way, and they dominated the game as a result.
Just quickly, do you agree with Gerard Whateley's assertion that this was the greatest coaching performance of all time across the season? Because they were 0-3, I think they were 2-5. They weren't in the 8 till round 16, and they finished 5th. And no team has won the flag from outside the top 4 in the modern era, aside from the Western Bulldogs.
In 16, yeah.
In 16.
I think I have a belief that so Brisbane were favourites going into the season. Brisbane and the Giants were seen as they're the premiership favourites before the first siren on round 0 had sounded. So it's come around, but hasn't it been a journey since then? Yeah, so 0-3. I think part of I don't think the best team of the first 8, 9, 10 weeks of any season. It's more difficult to be the best team at the beginning of the year and win the flag because you show your best, and it gives more time for the opposition to unpick it. I think Brisbane were the team. The premiers of recent years have been the teams that have evolved most throughout the year. They've improved most throughout the year. In many ways, they've started with a plan. It's fallen over, and then they've had to find plan B, C in terms of different personnel, a slightly different way to go about it to get the result at the end. And then you go back and you go, well, have a look at the journey they've travelled. Yeah, so they lose players with ACLs. They're 0-3 at the beginning of the year. They've only won 3.5 games out of their first 9. They're down by a mile in a semi-final. They're down by a fair bit in a preliminary final. They have to find a way, a slightly different way to how they've done it before to become successful. And the Lions deserve all the credit they get. Because Will Ashcroft and Lachie Neale, a little bit, they're chalk and cheese. They're mirror images of each other, and Ashcroft is obviously learning his craft from one of the best to do it in Lachie Neale. I thought Neale was the best player on the ground, I love Ashcroft and the way that he went about it. I think when he kicked his goal, he was ahead when you were looking at Norm Smith, but but he thoroughly deserves it. He's growing before our eyes. There's no doubt that he's now played 31 games of footy, and he's missed. He's missed. The only reason he's missed those is because of an ACL, and he's been in 2 short years. He's established himself in the game. He's won a Norm Smith medal. He's done an ACL, for Christ's sake, and he's been able to come back from that and then impose himself. And these were his first finals. He missed out on the finals last year, so. His first gives when he came back into the team, he made the Lions a better side because of his cleanliness at ground level, but also his first gives, not just out of stoppage, but in open play. And that was a trademark of the game. Like the Lions gave first gives to their teammates, and Sydney just didn't for whatever reason. They refused to trust the next easiest option to give a handball or a kick to. But he follows up like Joel Selwood always did, and that is an elite trait, to be able to dispose of the ball, or the ball moves from point A to point B. Will Ashcroft will be one of the first players moving towards that outnumber, so he'll always be a great outnumber player. So that work rate is there. He's clean. But the thing I love about it, he learned over the last couple of weeks. He learned to double up, and now whether that was coached or whether it was something that he saw, but he would give, and he was following up earlier in the finals, but his teammates weren't giving the ball back to him. He's one of the best decision makers. He's one of the best users, and he puts teammates into greater space. I think he will become an even bigger weapon for the Lions as he progresses and as they understand how deep and wide the reservoir of his attributes are. 30 touches, 3 tackles, that goal, like he was brilliant, and we're seeing a young star in the making.
So sometimes it takes footy fans in Victoria a little bit longer to appreciate young players from around the country.
Yeah.
How good can Will Ashcroft be?
Yeah, I think the gap in his 2 years is actually having missed a big chunk of last year with an ACL. There's no denying his talent.
Can he be Dacos?
Well, he'll definitely be in the conversation. Dacos, Sheasel, I think that'll be sort of the mix. I think Darcy Wilson's a rung below, but he'll keep coming because I really love him as a player as well. Harley Reid, of course, who's had the PR. But there's going to be, the young group of players that come in that you mentioned to me off air. He's basically been schooled as a professional, since his early teenage years. He was, he and his brother Levi, Will and Levi, who will come through next year, are ready-made. They've been preparing themselves for these opportunities, for the last 10 years. And there's a lot of kids around the country that are doing that. And if you're prepared to do the work and invest in your craft, you're going to be able to stand up when the moments come.
So the Norm Smith medal voting, Will Ashcroft had 14 votes, Lachie Neale got 8, Callum Archie 7 and Kai Lohman had 1. So the only judge that gave Lachie Neale 3 votes was Riley Beveridge from AFL.com.
Yep.
So you would have gone Lachie Neale, then Will Ashcroft?
Yeah, I would have gone Neale and Ashcroft, and I thought that, Lohman, Archie, I thought Starcevic was huge. I think he got recognised by one of the
I don't think he did.
The judges. He didn't get a one. Who was the one?
Kai Lohman got one.
Lohman got one. Yeah, so I think Starcevic was huge, especially early in the game.
So you would have gone him one vote?
It would have been really close. I think I would have gone for one of the maybe Lohman with his 3 goals early. The game was over at half time. Archie kicked 2 in that second quarter run. Lohman kicked a couple early. If Lohman had kicked a fourth out of the opportunities, he had a couple of opportunities there in the second quarter. I think that might have popped him up. But I would have gone Neale, Ashcroft. I think I still would have put. I'd put Lohman in for that one for his first half efforts. But well deserved, and that they had plenty to choose from.
The Swans. This is less positive. Where do you want to take this conversation?
Well, for me, it's about the psychology of where they're left. Not just where they're left, but how they came into this. The defeat of 2 years ago. Obviously the significance of their build through this year and how damaging they were at their very best, and then not to be able to turn up. It's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's a hard one to reconcile for players and coaches alike. Chat on field about the courage to put yourself out there, and I understand that it's real, but when you've fallen so far short again on the big stage, it rings a little hollow, and it would be real. Like, even though you're saying the words, if you're the senior coach or you're the leader or one of the leaders, even though you're saying the words, you're just realising that, oh my God, but we've done the same thing again. We haven't turned up again. So the Swans did a whole heap of work in the last couple of years. Emma Murray comes to the club. They talk about connection. They talk about the fact that against Geelong, early in the game, they go inside themselves. They don't connect well enough as a group. And they have put 2 years of work into preparing for this moment, this game, against this opposition, to prove that the work that they've done in the last couple of years, added to their talent, added to their program, added to their development, added to their offensive prowess and anything else that you want to look at, was going to be the difference, and it hasn't proven to be.
So where do you go from here? They've lost their last 4 grand finals, 63 points, 22 points, 81 points, 10 goals. They haven't got close.
You can go to the ones a few back, but this group are responsible for two of the last 3 grand finals they haven't.
Well, you can say 81 points and 60 points are the last two.
That's it.
So where do you go? John Longmire and the coaching staff must be eternally frustrated that they can't even get close on grand final day. And these players must feel the same.
Look, they were competitive. They were competitive on the scoreboard until the Lions went whooshka with their 6 goals in that. With 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. But the inside 50s were relatively even, but they couldn't win a contest in front of the ball, and so Brisbane got their intercept game going, and they couldn't stop the Lions forwards. It was their defenders were well beaten as well. Rampy was well beaten on the day. Heaney was hobbled and was clamped. Papley was well beaten by Starcevic. Hayward kicked an early goal, but really couldn't get going, and the supply there wasn't quite as wasn't great. Lloyd wasn't at his best. Goulden is an interesting one. Like there's a train of thought, and there's evidence enough on it that Sydney they've become bullies in some shape and form. And things are going their way. They're up and about, and their offensive prowess and their talent takes over, and they just overwhelm opposition.
Sounds like flat track bullies.
Well, it is a little like that. And then when they're really challenged, Goulden's a very good footballer, and he's polled well in Brownlows. We see him as one of the elite runners in the competition. He's an elite user. He seems like a really upbeat young kid. He had 24 touches, but he was ineffective. The goal that, if you get a chance, and I'll be showing it later tonight on the couch, the goal that Lohman kicks in the second quarter when Bailey handballs the ball to him 40 metres out. Lohman is 30 metres clear of any Sydney player. Goulden handed over Bailey to Rampy, and Rampy loses that contest. So Goulden now assumes the responsibility for Lohman, and they're on the wing. Lohman runs hard back towards goal to receive that handball and kick the goal. When he kicks the ball, Goulden is walking on the wing and has only moved 15 metres from where that matchup started, and he is now 35, 40 metres away from the guy that he assumed responsibility from his captain. Now, these are two leaders. These aren't. He's not a kid anymore. He refused to do that, to put that work in, to run back and to see that out, that handover out. Like he's going to live with that, and you've got to practice that in and out throughout a home and away season. You've got to practice it. You've got to be beyond reproach. It's like pulling out of a contest. It's like ducking your head or lifting your head when you need to go hard at a contest. He's going to have to prove to himself and to his teammates that he's not going to do that again when it matters. And this was before the scoreboard was looking poor. Out of everything in the weekend, that was my absolute favourite thing, and it was. I needed to get it on Buck Stops. I wanted to talk about it. Oscar McInerney's unbridled and sincere,
authentic, wasn't it?
An authentic celebration of his teammates, of Darcy Fort, of everything that the club and the team were involved in, was the best thing that I have seen in footy for pretty much my entire time. The fact that he was able to, not able to, it's not like he's tried to do this. This is just absolutely authentic. The bloke was that excited for his teammates, for his club. He did not think of himself in one iota. I just was that impressed. I want to get to know the bloke. I want to go say g'day. I want to tell him well done. Like, I'm so bloody proud of you.
You're about to swear then.
Swore. This is exactly, and you know who I go to? I go to Chris Fagan. I said, because you've created an environment that has pushed a bloke like this up, that has rewarded him with somewhat limited skill set, but attributes that have made his team better. But even more than that, what an individual? What a young man. And what do you reckon? How do you reckon Brisbane are going to approach the next 12 months when they've got a guy like that they want to get a premiership medallion around his neck because of his contribution to his teammates? This is if you want to teach young people, if you've got a young fella or a young girl that wants to play AFLW or sport or competitive or wants to succeed in life, have a look at that attitude and the way that he's carried himself. It doesn't say that he's not, that there wouldn't be something in him saying, I wish that I was there, or he's just pragmatic. He accepts it. He goes, look, what's done is done. The shoulder popped out, so there's nothing I can do about it. I'm wrapped for my teammates. It's in the word addictive kept coming out of his mouth. It's addictive. So he's already planting the seed. I know what it feels like from here. Now I want to be over there, And look, this is great.
They'd love him up there. They'd
Great
love him.
copy. Oh, what a remarkable young fellow. Well done to you.